Welcome, traveler. Tonight let us drift across the stars, beyond the reach of Earth, beyond even the familiar constellations, into a far future where empires span entire galaxies and deserts swallow empires whole. Here, in the year 10,000 and more, the fate of civilizations depends not on steel or fire, but on a mysterious spice, a substance that lengthens life, sharpens the mind, and bends the laws of space itself. It is called melange, and it grows only on one world, a world of endless dunes where the wind howls across burning sands and titanic creatures swim beneath the surface. Its name is Arrakis. But to its people, it is Dune. You can almost feel the heat pressing against your skin as the desert stretches into eternity. Every dune a golden wave frozen in time. The air is dry, each breath a grainy whisper in the throat. Water is life here, so precious it is hoarded in hidden caches, stored in still suits that recycle every drop of sweat and breath. Even tears are rare because to weep is to waste what the desert never gives back. And yet, buried beneath this sea of sand lies the greatest treasure of the known universe. The spice, a substance that fuels interstellar travel, makes possible the journeys between stars, and is sought after by every noble house of the Imperium. Whoever controls Arrakis controls the spice, and whoever controls the spice controls the Empire. Far away from this desolate world lies Caladan, a planet of green seas, misted cliffs, and rains that fall without end. It is a place of safety and heritage for House Atreides, a noble family known for its honor, discipline, and sense of justice. Here, in the stone fortress by the sea, young Paul Atreides walks the halls with a mind already sharper than most men thrice his age. He is 15, yet his eyes seem older. Holding the weight of dreams that feel too heavy for someone so young, he listens to the ocean crashing against the rocks, knowing it will soon be only a memory, for his family has been ordered to leave this water-rich sanctuary. The order has come from Emperor Shaddam IV, the ruler of the known universe. By his command, Duke Leto Atreides will take stewardship of Arrakis, replacing their ancient rivals, House Harkonnen. To the common eye, it looks like a gift, a reward for Leto's loyalty. But in the political world of the Imperium, every gift hides a trap. The Harkonnens are not being defeated. They are retreating by design, leaving behind spies, assassins, and seeds of treachery. Within the Atreides household, there is unease. The Lady Jessica, concubine of the Duke and mother of Paul, sees the danger with the trained eyes of a Bene Gesserit. She is no mere noblewoman. She belongs to an ancient sisterhood of women who manipulate politics, bloodlines, and fate itself. They whisper of a prophecy, of a long-awaited figure called the Kwisatz Haderach, one who will see both the future and the past, a being who can bridge all divides. Jessica has broken her order's sacred rules by bearing a son when she was commanded to give the Duke only daughters. She defied them, for love. And now that son is the young man pacing the stone corridors, carrying within him the possibility of becoming the very figure the Bene Gesserit have schemed to create for millennia. Paul senses the weight of expectation pressing upon him. He dreams of a desert girl with eyes like polished obsidian, eyes that see into his soul. He dreams of a storm that will shake the universe, of battles fought beneath burning suns. He has never set foot on Arrakis, yet the desert already lives inside him, whispering, calling. He confesses these dreams to his mother, who watches him with a mixture of pride and fear. She knows that within Paul lies a destiny greater than dukedoms and titles. But she also knows that destiny is cruel. That night, as the storm rages over Caladan's sea, a visitor comes to House Atreides. The Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam, a figure of both power and dread within the Bene Gesserit, arrives to test the boy. Her black robes sweep across the hall and her sharp eyes pierce through the shadows. She has come not as a guest, but as an examiner, perhaps even as a judge. The Duke's soldiers shift uneasily, for they know her word can bend the Emperor's will. Paul is led into a chamber where a strange box waits on a table. The Reverend Mother sits before him, her voice like a knife cloaked in silk. She speaks of pain, of fear, of survival. She places his hand within the box and raises a poisoned needle to his throat. "This will kill you if you pull away," she tells him, her gaze unblinking. The boy is trapped. If he withdraws his hand from the box, he dies. If he keeps it there, he will feel a pain so great that his body will scream for escape. The test is simple: endure or perish. Flame burns through his hand, though he knows it is an illusion, a trick of the mind. Still, the agony is real, searing, unbearable. Sweat beads on his brow. His heart pounds. The needle rests at his neck, whispering death with every breath. He remembers his mother's training. Control the mind, master the body, become more than animal, more than fear. Fear is the little death, she had told him. He repeats the mantra silently, teeth clenched against the fire that devours his nerves. Time stretches, a desert of pain. When at last the Reverend Mother removes the needle, Paul pulls his hand free. It is unmarked, though he could swear it had burned away to bone. She studies him with something like awe, something like dread. "You have passed," she murmurs. "Few men could." Yet in her eyes lingers a storm of calculation. The Bene Gesserit had sought the Kwisatz Haderach through generations of selective breeding. Jessica, by choosing to give Leto a son, may have accelerated the plan, and now that son has withstood a test meant to separate humans from beasts. The Reverend Mother warns Paul. Arrakis is a crucible, and his path leads into darkness. The desert will either destroy him or transform him. Already she sees signs of the prophecy unfolding, a boy who might be the one who can bridge space and time. A messiah long awaited by the desert tribes, but prophecy is dangerous and destiny has teeth. Paul returns to his chambers with his hands still trembling from the phantom pain. He looks out one last time at the Sea of Caladan, its waves shining silver beneath the moons. Tomorrow he will leave this place of water and safety. Tomorrow he will step into the sands of Arrakis, where every grain burns, every shadow hides an enemy, and every dream may become a weapon. The story of Dune has begun. The salty winds of Caladan carry a farewell that feels heavier than the ocean itself. You stand with Paul in the fortress keep, watching servants load crates of precious possessions onto ships. The sea rages against the cliffs as though it knows it is losing its lords. House Atreides has ruled these waters for generations, their banner of the Red Hawk flying proudly above storm-swept battlements. Now, by decree of Emperor Shaddam IV, they must abandon this world and take command of Arrakis. To most, it seems a reward. The spice planet, the most valuable property in the Imperium, offered into Duke Leto's hands. But beneath the seeming gift lies a blade's edge. The Duke knows it. His eyes, usually calm and steady, linger on the horizon with a weight of foreboding. He explains to Paul what it means to be chosen for Arrakis. The spice, he says, is the lifeblood of power. With it, the spacing guild navigates the stars. Without it, the empire collapses. Whoever controls Arrakis controls everything. But as he speaks, there is no triumph in his voice. There is only the steady calculation of a man who knows that power is never given freely. The Emperor's gesture reeks of politics, of a hidden trap. In the darkened halls, shadows stretch like fingers. The Atreides are not alone in sensing the danger. Jessica, sharp-eyed and vigilant, walks the corridors of the keep with silent grace. Her Bene Gesserit training has made her more than a noblewoman. She is a weapon clothed in silk, her voice able to bend wills, her mind trained to read the slightest tremor in expression. She urges Leto to be cautious. She warns Paul in whispers of the dangers they face, and though she loves the Duke fiercely, she cannot deny the tension inside her. The knowledge that her choice to bear him a son may have shifted the great plan of her order, the Bene Gesserit breeding program that spans centuries. In Paul, those centuries of hidden design awaken. His dreams are filled with sand, with whispering voices, with a girl whose eyes gleam blue within blue from long exposure to spice. He tells Jessica of these visions. He sees the desert girl leading him to a destiny that terrifies him. He sees blood spilled across the universe in his name. He wakes in the night, shivering, torn between awe and dread. Jessica tells him to control his fear, to master it, to remember the litany of the Bene Gesserit. Fear is the little death, yet in her heart she recognizes the signs. Paul may be more than just her son. He may be the Kwisatz Haderach, the prophesied one. On the eve of departure, Duke Leto gathers his household. He speaks with quiet conviction, reminding them that their strength lies not in cruelty like the Harkonnens, but in loyalty and honor. He looks to his men, Duncan Idaho, loyal swordmaster and friend, Gurney Halleck, scarred warrior and troubadour with songs as sharp as his blade, and Thufir Hawat, the Mentat strategist whose mind works with machine-like precision. These are the pillars upon which House Atreides stands, yet even among them shadows creep, for Leto suspects that one of his trusted inner circle may already be compromised. Beyond the stars, the Harkonnens wait. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, grotesque in both body and spirit, laughs in his fortress on Giedi Prime. His massive frame, bloated by years of gluttony and cruelty, hovers above the ground on suspensors. His mind, however, is sharp with venom. The Emperor's order to relinquish Arrakis is part of a greater design, a scheme in which the Baron plays his role with delight, for he has planted his spies deep within House Atreides, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At his side is his twisted nephew, Feyd-Rautha, groomed as heir and weapon, a blade sharpened on cruelty, trained for blood. And then there is Rabban, the other nephew, a brutal man set to govern Arrakis once more in the Baron's name. The plan is simple and merciless. Lure the Atreides into the desert, allow them to think they are rulers, then unleash the Emperor's Sardaukar troops disguised as Harkonnen soldiers. House Atreides will be annihilated, the Duke destroyed, and Feyd-Rautha placed as heir to Arrakis and its spice. In one stroke, the Emperor will rid himself of a rival and secure his own power. As the Atreides prepare to leave Caladan, the atmosphere is heavy with unspoken fears. Paul walks once more along the cliffs, the waves crashing below, the salt air stinging his face. He knows he will not hear the sea's endless rhythm again. In the distance, the great ships wait, shimmering with power, ready to pierce the void and carry him to a world of dust and danger. The desert girl haunts his dreams, whispering of a path that seems both glorious and terrible. He does not yet understand that every step forward is one more into the heart of prophecy, into the storm that will engulf emperors, barons, and entire civilizations. As the last of Caladan fades behind them, the Atreides family sails toward Arrakis, toward the land where water is worth blood, where shadows whisper secrets, and where the fate of the universe rests on the shoulders of a boy who is not yet a man. The carryall drops from fold space like a sigh, and Arrakis rises beneath you in a sweep of copper and fire. Heat blurs the horizon. Air wavers as if the planet breathes. The Atreides convoy descends through crosswinds toward Arrakeen, the former Harkonnen capital, gouged into a line of ochre ridges. Gun emplacements sit like old scabs on the hills. Everything looks hard-used, functional, suspicious. You can smell dust already, a dry spice sweetness that lingers at the back of the throat like a warning. The landing field roars with engines and shouted orders. Men in still suits work with practiced economy, faces hidden behind nose plugs and moisture traps. Paul steps from the craft and the sun hits him like a hammer. The light is bigger here, white and merciless, flattening shadows. Jessica's veil snaps in the wind. Duke Leto lifts his hand to shade his eyes and takes in the city. Narrow streets, thick-walled houses, wind traps glittering on rooftops, cistern towers like blunt spears punching at the sky. Everything is designed to keep what little water there is from escaping. This is not Caladan. This is a place where even breath is counted and bargained. The Fremen emissary waits near the foot of the ramp, shoulders wrapped in sun-bleached fabric, eyes stained blue on blue by a lifetime of spice. She is Shadut Mapes, water scavenger and judge of truth. Her posture is rigid, but tension ripples under the surface. Jessica meets her gaze and senses a test. The words are careful, ritual-shaped, half in greeting, half in challenge. Mapes seeks signs, not titles. She searches the new lady of Arrakis for the marks of a fate whispered in the Sietches. Jessica's Bene Gesserit training, the fine control of voice and the reading of tiny muscles, answers with precision. One wrong note and knives will flash in narrow alleys. One right note and doors sealed by fear may open. Inside the residency, Harkonnen residue clings to corners like grease. Leto orders the place swept for traps. Thufir's hawk eyes map lines of approach and retreat. Gurney's fingers hover telltale near the hilt of his knife even as he cracks a grim half-smile. Duncan Idaho returns from the deep desert long enough to bow low to his duke and whisper that the Fremen are not the savages the Harkonnens painted them to be. He has drunk with them, fought beside them, learned the slow precision of their speech, the way their silences carry meaning. He believes they could be the strongest allies House Atreides has ever known. He also believes they will not be bought, only earned. Night in Arrakis does not cool quickly. Heat radiates from stone like memory from a scar. Paul moves through the residency alone, learning its turns and blind angles. He stops at a small window grate and watches dust twist in moonlight. In the distance, sand hisses softly as if a giant is turning in its sleep. The spice smell grows stronger. He closes his eyes and the desert girl returns to him. Her face lit by an unseen fire, her gaze unwavering. A pulse beats behind the vision, something vast and rhythmical. It is the planet, and it is also him. The paths he glimpses branch and recombine. Some end in triumph, others in oceans of blood. He reaches toward one future and feels the others tremble. The attack comes without footsteps, only a thread of movement in the air. A hunter-seeker slips from a wall vent, a hair-thin needle balanced on a cushion of vibration, snuffling for motion like a blind insect. Paul's training snaps into place. He becomes stillness, breath narrowing to an invisible line. The device hovers inches from his cheek, confused by the sudden absence of prey. A servant enters the doorway at the wrong instant. Paul moves, precise and minimal, and palms the seeker from behind, pinching the guiding vein until its whine dies. The near death leaves no mark on his skin, but it writes a sentence in his mind. The trap is sprung. The game is open. The enemy is inside the walls. Thufir's fury burns cold. Harkonnen agents, yes, but more than that. The pattern suggests an imperial signature, masked and layered. Leto absorbs the report in silence, and then, because duty cannot wait for perfect safety, he leaves with his retinue to inspect a spice harvesting operation at dawn. Paul watches his father go and feels a tightening in his chest that is not fear exactly, but the echo of futures that refuse to settle. Duke Leto carries honor like armor. In Arrakis, honor is a seam that enemies love to pry open. When Jessica returns to her rooms, Mapes is waiting with a wrapped bundle. The Fremen woman's voice has a new edge to it, measuring, hopeful, guarded. The bundle holds a blade the color of old ivory, faintly translucent, alive with a soft inner sheen. It is a tooth of the great sandworm ground to a cruel edge. A crysknife. To display it openly is to commit to the desert and to secrecy. To mishandle it is to invite blood. Mapes asks a question that is not quite a question, a lattice of prophecy and proof. Jessica answers with the right shape of words and the exact pressure of tone. Trust does not bloom, but something drier and stronger takes root. A contract of breath and silence. Paul finds a still suit waiting for him the next day, flexible and close-fitting, built to trap every drop of moisture the body exudes. He studies its seals, its pumps, the clever moisture's catch pockets at the thighs and chest. When the imperial planetologist arrives to escort the Atreides out to a harvester, Paul recognizes the way the man carries himself. This is someone who thinks in terms of systems, not trophies. Lietkind's voice is flat, almost bored, yet his attention fixes on the boy with sudden intensity when he notes how Paul adjusts the suit's straps. Not fumbling, not guessing, as if he remembers a lesson he has not yet been taught. Kynes watches, and for a heartbeat, a different future glints in his eyes. At the midday meal, spice dust flickers in the air. It settles on everything here, a fine shimmer that cannot be fully scrubbed away. Paul tastes it in bread, in water, in the breath he draws through the still suit collar he is still learning to love and hate. The flavor is warm and bittersweet like cinnamon and lightning. The world tilts half a degree. His pupils flare, then calm, then flare again. Vision steps forward from behind his eyes. Dunes moving like oceans, tribes gathered under a sky fretted with stormlight, a name spoken with many meanings, Muad'Dib. He inhales slowly until the present returns to its ledge. Jessica watches him with the calm of a trained observer and the fear of a mother. She remembers the Reverend Mother's verdict and hears beneath it the older music of her order. A gambit that has spanned centuries may be converging here in her son. The Bene Gesserit bred for a figure who could see through tangled threads and step where others drowned. But the sisterhood never wanted chaos. Jessica senses chaos coming, born on a prophecy the Fremen hold close like hidden water. The gift is sight. The curse is inevitability. Gurney brings his balisé to the training hall that evening, strings humming in the hot air. He plays while he spars with Paul, strikes measured to teach rather than crush. Blow by blow, the rhythm shifts from lesson to revelation. Paul's body remembers what it does not yet know. His mind splits cleanly between tactical calculation and something more fluid, a tide that moves outside the hall, across the city, out into the dunes. He parries a feint that should have surprised him and feels absurdly like a sandfish slipping through a predator's jaws. Gurney lowers his blade and searches the boy's face for the man he will become. He does not say what he sees. It is not his to name, that night in a wind that smells of stone and distant storms. Paul stands on the residency roof and looks toward the black line of desert. The city murmurs beneath him, a living cistern of hoarded breaths. Far out beyond rock and patrols and mapped safe ground, the sand hides its greatest secret. Wormsong carries on the air like the edge of thunder. He closes his eyes and, without intending to, whispers a name he has not yet earned. The sound vanishes into the heat, but the desert hears. Gifts demand prices, curses demand choices. Arrakis waits. In the dim-lit chambers of Gidi Prime, the universe reeks of oil, smoke, and cruelty. Here, the shadows cling to steel catwalks above roaring furnaces, and the sky burns with the orange glow of endless industry. This is the heart of House Harkonnen, a world stripped bare by greed, pulsing with factories that never sleep. Within the fortress walls, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen hovers in obscene luxury, his suspensor harness groaning under the weight of his swollen flesh. Yet behind his grotesque body lies a mind sharper than any blade, calculating, ruthless, endlessly patient. He leans forward, tiny eyes gleaming with hunger, as reports from Arrakis flow across the chamber. The Atreides have landed. The Duke walks with dignity, Paul with promise. The Baron chuckles a wet, rasping sound, for he knows it is only the opening move. Arrakis has not been abandoned to Atreides' hands. It has been baited like a trap. Around him stand his chosen instruments of cruelty. Beast Rabban, his brutish nephew, heavy-set and brutal, impatient to smash and terrorize. The Baron feeds him promises of blood, knowing that Rabban is a hammer too dull to shape destiny but strong enough to cause chaos. Beside him waits Feyd-Rautha, the younger nephew, sleek as a predator, eyes burning with ambition. Unlike Rabban, Feyd is sharp. The heir the Baron grooms carefully, a blade honed for precision strikes. To Feyd he whispers of succession, of the throne that will one day be his. To Rabban he offers the desert as playground, trusting his violence to draw hatred that Feyd can later redeem. The scheme itself unfolds like a poisoned flower. The Emperor, threatened by Duke Leto's growing popularity and the loyalty he inspires among the great houses, has struck a secret bargain with the Harkonnens. The Atreides will be destroyed root and branch. Imperial Sardaukar, the Emperor's death commandos feared across the stars, will disguise themselves in Harkonnen livery. When the moment is right, they will descend on Arrakis, joining Rabban's forces to annihilate the Atreides line. No suspicion will cling to the Emperor, and the Harkonnens will rise once more over the Spice Planet. The Baron, bloated with self-satisfaction, outlines his trap. Dr. Wellington Yue, the Atreides physician, a man trusted beyond suspicion, has already been broken. Though trained by the Suk school in a condition to be incapable of betrayal, Yue's heart has been pierced. The Baron holds his beloved wife as hostage, promising reunion in exchange for betrayal. The doctor resists outwardly, but inside he fractures. His hatred festers, pointed at the Baron even as he yields to the blackmail. He plots in silence, promising himself vengeance in the only coin left to him. Betrayal twisted back upon the betrayer. Back on Arrakis, subtle signs grow sharper. Paul trains under Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck, honing his blade work, reflexes, and tactical awareness. His father watches with quiet pride, though a shadow lingers in Leto's eyes. He speaks often to Paul of leadership, of the burden a ruler carries. A ruler is not a man who seeks power for himself, the Duke says. He is the one willing to sacrifice, to carry the pain of others on his shoulders. His voice is steady, but Paul sees in it a weariness, the knowledge that honor may not be enough in a universe ruled by treachery. Jessica feels the tightening coil as well. The Fremen whisper prophecy, and her role within the Bene Gesserit weighs on her. She watches Paul grow into his power, his voice sharper, his sight deeper, his control greater than she could have predicted. In him lies a dangerous convergence: Bene Gesserit training, Atreides honor, and visions that stretch beyond human measure. She prays she has not unleashed more than she can guide. Meanwhile, Duke Leto seeks allies. He meets with the Fremen through Liet Kynes, the imperial planetologist whose loyalty is split between Emperor and Desert. Kynes watches the Atreides with interest, sensing something different in their approach. The Harkonnens saw only tools, bodies to be exploited, a people to be crushed. But Leto speaks of partnership, of respect, of making the desert bloom. Kynes does not show it, but in the quiet corners of his mind, hope flickers. Perhaps this Duke is not like the others. Perhaps he is worthy of the desert's loyalty. Yet even as trust begins to take root, betrayal slithers closer. Dr. Yue sharpens his knife against a future he cannot escape. In the still of night, he whispers his wife's name, promising that her suffering will not be in vain. His hands heal the Atreides by day and prepare their doom by night. Poison waits in the hollows of his soul, a gift he means to deliver not only to the Harkonnens but also to himself. The desert does not care for schemes or politics. Its winds rise, carrying spice dust like a veil across the horizon. Beneath the sands, the great worms stir. their bodies vast enough to swallow harvesters whole, their passage marked by thunder that shakes the ground. To the Fremen, these creatures are gods. To the Harkonnens, they are obstacles. To Paul, in his dreams, they are both omen and destiny. He sees them in flashes of vision, their ridged backs rising like mountains, their mouths opening to reveal rings of teeth large enough to devour armies. The desert whispers their name, Shai Hulud. In the hidden chambers of the residency, Paul confides to Jessica that he feels a hand guiding him, pulling him towards something vast and unavoidable. "I see paths," he murmurs, "so many paths. Some end with the fall of our house, some with oceans of fire." Jessica hushes him, but she cannot quiet the storm in her own heart. She sees the truth forming in her son's eyes. He is not just heir to House Atreides. He is heir to something larger, older, more dangerous. Far away, the Baron laughs again, his voice echoing off the steel walls of Gidi Prime. He savors the coming collapse, blind to the shape of prophecy that slips through even his careful nets. He believes himself the spider at the center of the web. He does not see the storm building at its edge. The desert listens. The future sharpens. The trap is almost sprung. Night folds over Arrakis like a shutter. Heat still bleeds from stone and metal, but the wind carries a different taste now, as if the city has been wrapped in a thin skin of silence. In the residency, alarm circuits glow green. Patrol routes hum along their fixed loops. Thufir's nets lie in place like taut wire. Then very softly something unthreads. A bank of shields whispers offline. A door that never opens at this hour opens and does not log the event. A medic with gentle hands walks the private halls with eyes that do not meet the guards. Dr. Wellington Yue moves like a man underwater. His mind chants two names with every step, his wife and the Baron. He has been trained never to betray. He has already betrayed. The Souk diamond on his brow might as well be an old scar now, a memory of a promise he can no longer keep. In the Duke's study, he waits in darkness until Leto enters, only a breath behind the pout of the wind along the shutters. Yue's sappho-dry mouth forms an apology he will not say aloud. His weapon hisses. Leto staggers, then sinks to one knee, the paralytic flooding muscle by muscle until even the Duke's grief-hard eyes cannot move. Yue catches him before he falls. He props him in the chair where Leto has signed decrees and read reports and stared too long at maps of a desert that kills the careless. There is no time. There is only the last thing left to give. From the pouch at his belt, Yue takes a slim cylinder and presses it into Leto's mouth, seating it in the place of a tooth. When he is close, he whispers, voice stripped to wire, "Bite down." Not love, not forgiveness, a device and a distance, and a hope that the one act left to the Duke can shatter the spider's web. Outside, thunder that is not weather pounds the hills. The shield wall flares white like lightning as something slams into it again and again. It collapses, a giant breath sucked in and not released. Devastators rake the outer batteries. In the confusion of glare and smoke, landing craft drop from the dark like carrion birds. The first wave wears Harkonnen colors. The second moves with a precision that is not Harkonnen at all. Sardaukar, the Emperor's killers in borrowed livery. They fall on the Atreides positions with the economy of a practiced execution. Paul wakes to a needle-prick silence in his room, to the knowledge that the pattern is broken. Jessica is already at the door, eyes narrowing at the lack of guard footfalls. The air tastes faintly sweet. A sedative fog climbs the walls of breath. He and his mother share one clipped look and seal their lungs for 3 slow counts, but the dose is measured for accuracy. The world slips sideways. Paul hears, as if from another room, the thud of boots, the clamp of shackles. He tries to speak, and the sound drifts away like dust. Duncan, Idaho meets the first assault in the corridor with an economy that is almost art. His blade folds men as if they were lines on a page he has studied since childhood. He roars a warning into comms and receives only static and the thin, clean scream of metal cut by a field too strong to survive. Gurney holds a choke point with a squad that keeps shrinking every minute and sings under his breath as he fights, a gravel melody that sets timing in his bones. Thufir moves from board to board, rerouting, cutting losses, trying to read the shape of an attack whose outlines refuse to match the Harkonnen he knows. Every path ends in pressure he cannot counter. Somewhere in that pressure lives a traitor. The pattern points with brutal simplicity at Jessica. He files the conclusion because there is no time to grieve it. The residency cannot be held. Streets constrict. Squares fill with smoke and screams. Ornithopters rake rooftops. The Fremen within the city melt into alleys at the first scent of Sardaukar and vanish like spilled water. Liet Kynes watches the sky from a high parapet and measures the weight of the storm against a plan older than the Harkonnens' greed. The desert wins in the long run. Tonight the desert will measure the Atreides. He sends a coded order toward a sietch and disappears into stone. They bring Duke Leto to the Harkonnen command post, a room dressed as a temporary throne. Rabban looms nearby, hot-eyed with bloodlust. A twisted mentat licks blue-stained lips as he leans forward in curiosity. Peter wants the Duke to notice him. The Baron floats at ease on his suspensors, a gloved hand turning lazily as if testing air. He coos over his success, over the pretty way the trap has sprung, over the neatness of a betrayal that violated the one conditioning the Atreides believed inviolate. He looks at Yue and smiles as if at a pet who has done a trick. Yue asks for his wife. He asks softly because hope embarrasses him now. The Baron rewards him with a word and then with a knife, not from his own hand, of course, but with the ease of a man closing a ledger entry. Yue folds around the pane with a small sound and thinks, for a last sharp instant, that perhaps he has placed the final piece on the board correctly after all. The Baron turns from the cooling body without interest. He orders Leto brought closer so he can savor a speech about the mathematics of vengeance and the economics of hate. He wants the Duke to taste the contours of defeat. Leto watches the mouth he must reach. He feels nothing from the shoulders down, but the shape of his jaw remains obedient. He cannot look at Yue. He will see his friend's face every night if he lives. He will not live. There are futures where this moment is a point in a pattern of blood. There are futures where this moment is a fulcrum. He waits. He lets the Baron drift nearer on the soft hiss of his machines. There, between them, the stale scent of suspensor lubricant, the tang of spice from the room's air, the faintest rasp of Peter's breath as he leans in to witness. Leto closes his teeth. The world becomes a soundless storm. A puff of scent like bitter almonds blows outward from the Duke's mouth. The nearest men die first with surprise on their faces, Peter among them, eyes wide in outrage that the pattern ended here. The Baron jerks backward, suspensors whining. Guards slam into furniture, topple, fail to rise. Leto rides the last edges of breath into the dark and regrets only that he sees the Baron still moving. He thinks of Paul. He thinks of water striking rock on Caladan. He is finished with thinking. The shock runs outward through the occupied city. Signals tangle. Sardaukar adjust and press. Gurney's position collapses. He is driven into the outer districts and then into the waste, dragging a handful of survivors who will follow him into any storm. Thufir is taken in a sweep he did not anticipate and wakes in a Harkonnen room with an offer fashioned from chains. Duncan slips the net and aims himself toward the only chance left. Find Paul and Jessica, rip them from the enemy's hands, carry them into the desert, and trust the Fremen to be more than rumor. Paul wakes bound, mouth gagged against the voice he has barely begun to master. Jessica's wrists are cinched behind her, her eyes clear and measuring. 3 Harkonnen agents cram the thopter with their stink and their fear. The pilot glances back too often. The officer in charge avoids looking Jessica in the face. He has been given a simple order: take them deep and let the desert finish what knives began. No bodies, no graves, only wind and sand and the long swallowing. The lights of Arrakis fall away. The dunes take their place, silvered under the broken moon. The thopter's wings shudder as the pilot skirts the edge of a brewing storm. Inside the cabin, the air tastes of oil and sweat. Paul tests the give of his bonds and catalogues his options. The world has narrowed to a plan written in small motions and one chance to turn command with a word aimed at the right ear. Beside him, Jessica centers breath and waits for the precise instant when the balance will shift. Back in the captured residency, a torn banner lies in dust where the Red Hawk once flew. In the Harkonnen command, a Mentat's body cools and a Baron laughs too loudly to convince himself. In the streets, the last Atreides pockets break and burn. The house that carried honor like a light has fallen. Not extinguished, scattered like embers on a wind that blows toward the deep desert. The ornithopter shudders as it knifes through the desert wind, its wings thrumming in ragged rhythm. Inside, the darkness smells of sweat, fear, and oil. Paul sits bound, his head swaying with the turbulence, while Jessica kneels beside him, wrists tied cruelly behind her. The Harkonnen agents mutter to each other, their nerves frayed, their eyes flicking again and again toward the endless dunes rolling below. None of them want to be out here. They fear the desert more than the lady and her son. But orders are orders. Fly deep into the wastelands, cut the thopter loose, and let the sands and the worms devour the last heirs of House Atreides. Paul closes his eyes. The drug fog has thinned. The rhythm of the storm outside bleeds into him like a second heartbeat. He senses possibilities stretching like threads, some taut, some snapping, some weaving into patterns too vast to name. For a moment he sees them all, the worm sign boiling up beneath their craft, the blue-eyed girl reaching for him, the empire burning in his name. He opens his eyes and meets his mother's gaze. Jessica nods once, a signal without words. She is ready. She twists in her bonds, working her fingers against the cords. Every Bene Gesserit lesson comes alive in her muscles. The control of breathing, the subtle shifting of tension. She does not strain. She flows, easing the knots until her hands slip free. The guards are too busy watching the horizon, too busy imagining what stirs beneath the sands to notice the change. One of them leans closer, laughing nervously at some crude joke. Jessica inhales, her voice dropping into a register that thrums like a string plucked in the bone. "Untie me," she commands, the syllables edged with the force of the voice. The man's eyes glaze, his hands obey before his mind understands. In seconds, her wrists are free and she strikes with precision. A heel to the throat, a twist of the knife belt, a snap of tendon. The cabin erupts in shouts and chaos. Paul surges forward, still bound, knocking one of the guards off balance with the weight of his body. Jessica's knife flashes, catching the pale glint of moonlight. Another man falls, gagging, his lifeblood spilling into the footwell. The pilot swears, fighting the controls as the craft lurches downward. Jessica rips the gag from Paul's mouth and slices his bonds. He stands, shaky but clear-eyed, and grips the controls from behind the pilot. With sudden force, he leans close, his words honed sharp. "Turn us." The voice slips into the man's spine. The pilot obeys, jerking the thopter into a new course. The last guard lunges and Paul meets him head-on. A lifetime of training blossoms into instinct. He twists, strikes, disarms, and the man slams against the bulkhead unconscious. The thopter bucks in the wind, wings whining, and Jessica seizes the moment to heave the dead weight of a body out into the desert night. The storm rises to meet them, its howl shaking the craft's bones. Sand lashes the windows like 1,000 knives. Lightning dances within the cloud, jagged veins of white across a bruised sky. Paul knows the thopter will not hold. He fights the controls until his arms ache, but the storm is stronger. Jessica watches him, seeing both her son and something beyond him, a calm that borders on unnatural. He is not afraid. His lips move silently, shaping words that feel older than memory. This is the test. The thopter plunges into the storm. Darkness swallows everything. The wings rip, tearing free in the gale. The craft spins, metal shrieking. Jessica's hand finds Paul's, their grip fierce. Then the world explodes into sand and sound, and nothing holds. Silence. Paul wakes half buried in dunes, his lungs choking on grit. The stars blaze above, sharp and cold, while the desert stretches in every direction, a frozen sea of silver waves. The wreckage of the thopter lies shattered nearby, half swallowed already by the sand. Jessica stirs, coughing, alive but bruised. They crawl free, their still suits scraping, their bodies aching. Above them, the night feels endless. No walls, no cities, no armies. Only the desert. The silence presses close until a sound rises beneath it. A deep, rolling tremor that grows with every heartbeat. The sand shifts beneath their feet. Jessica grips Paul's arm, her voice low. Worm sign. The ground pulses, and in the distance, dunes collapse in a long ripple. Something vast moves beneath, unseen but immense. Paul watches the undulating shadow stretch across the horizon, a living mountain traveling just below the surface. His visions flash, teeth in endless rings, a mouth that could swallow cities, a people who ride the storm of its passage. His heart hammers not with fear but recognition. They flee into a rock outcropping, scrambling up as sand boils behind them. A thunderous roar fills the air. From the darkness rises Shai-Hulud, the great sandworm, its body ridged and glistening under the moon. The surface erupts as it breaches, taller than the residency walls of Arrakis, its mouth opening in a cathedral of teeth. Paul feels the wind of its passing, a force that shoves him to his knees. Jessica presses close against the rock, eyes wide but controlled. For a long, eternal moment, the worm rears, then turns, sliding back into the deep with a sound like thunder rolling away. The desert swallows it whole once more. Paul exhales, trembling, alive with awe. In the silence that follows, he understands something more clearly than ever before. They are not meant to survive as prey in this desert. To endure, they must become part of its rhythm, part of its fury. The worm was not just a terror. It was a herald. Alone now, hunted, stripped of their house, Paul and Jessica look out across the dunes. Somewhere beyond, the Fremen live in hidden sieges, whispered about but unseen by outsiders. Somewhere in the sands, prophecy waits. Paul tastes spice on the air, its bitter sweetness sinking into his blood. His visions sharpen, the paths before him burning brighter. He whispers the girl's name without knowing he has spoken it. Chani. The desert has taken everything from him, and in that emptiness it offers something new. Destiny. Dawn bleeds slowly into the dunes, a pale blade working at the horizon until the desert shows its scars again. You rise from the lee of the rocks, shake sand from your still suit, and listen. The wind speaks first, then a dim pulse beneath it, then only your own breath. No engines, no patrols. The wreck is a broken ribcage half buried nearby, already claimed by the sand. You and Jessica take stock with clinical calm, opening the survival pack that Yue arranged. That last red thread he left across the trap. Rations sealed in transparent film. A paracompass that jitters and lies. A still tent. A pair of thumpers. A duct kit. A maker hook you are not yet ready to understand. The sun climbs. Heat begins its quiet work. You study the terrain and map a route that tacks from rock to rock, never more than a sprint across open sand. Jessica watches your hands and says nothing, but her eyes record the changes in you. When you move with desert logic now. Your gait loosens into the sandwalk, that arrhythmic pattern you saw in dream fragments. Never the same cadence twice, never a steady drumbeat that calls what swims below. Your steps blend with wind noise, your shadow shortens. Time thins into water counts and rest cycles measured by the ache in your calves. At a long gap where rock ends and mirage begins, you set the thumper deep. Its spring kicks and the buried plunger begins its patient, idiot beat. The ground answers. Far off, a ripple lifts across the surface like breath under a sheet. You and Jessica cross at an angle, quick and light, every second a bargain with the rhythm you refuse to make. The beat grows louder, then slides away as something vast takes the bait and passes, a submerged cathedral of muscle and ancient hunger. You do not look back. Midday brings knives of light. You crawl under an overhang and seal the still tent, turning your breath into a small weather. The air is damp with the ghost of your own life. Jessica sleeps in trained intervals, then wakes to watch you while you dream with eyes open, seeing more futures than the tent can hold. Some are narrow and survivable, cut into stone with patience. Some are a flood. Somewhere in all of them, a name returns like a tide. Muad'Dib. You do not say it aloud. You break camp at the tilt of evening, the sky gone copper, the dunes throwing long, cold shadows. As you crest a slope, a shape waits on the ridge opposite, then resolves into many shapes. Robes the color of sand, hoods, blue and blue eyes that hold the desert's reflection. Knives that gleam like moon teeth. They have been watching you long enough to know your measure. It is not an ambush. It is a judgment. The leader steps forward with the stillness of someone who has learned to move only when necessary. He is dark-bearded, scarred by wind. The lines of responsibility cut deep. Stilgar, Jessica will learn, but for now he is only command rendered in bone and muscle. He speaks in a desert-soft voice, and the words are both welcome and test. Your mother answers with the right turn of tone, the Bene Gesserit music that finds truth across languages. The knives do not lower. A man to Stilgar's right grins with his teeth in contempt. His name will be Jameis, and he is already building a story where your water becomes the tribe's. He steps close, offers insult with the ease of someone who thinks he cannot be touched. Jessica flows, not striking, only shifting and catching, and in a blink she has him face down with a crysknife at the coil of muscle that guards his life. The circle contracts, sand whispers under sudden feet. Stilgar's hand lifts an inch and the circle freezes. The lines at the corners of his eyes deepen, not in anger but in revision. He has seen the weirding way before. Not with this grace. Not from an outworlder woman who moves like thirst thinking. You could have killed him, his posture says, even if his mouth says nothing yet. Jessica's blade retreats one deliberate hair no further. It is an answer couched as respect. Stilgar exhales, a small concession to astonishment, and then everything resets around a new axis. He names her Sayadina to be, not as a promise, but as a door that might open if she walks rightly. He looks at you next. His gaze is weight, not threat. He reads your suit fitting at a glance. He notices how you stand, how you keep your back to rock, how you let your eyes travel without challenging. He files it away. A figure steps from the rear rank and the world tightens to a needle. She is your age, desert-born, her face controlled but not cold, her eyes the blue of spice and stormlight. She carries herself like someone who has never wasted emotion. Chani. The name arrives already known. You are careful not to show it. She looks at you with the frankness of someone measuring a tool she might one day have to trust. When she speaks, her voice has the timbre of sand over stone. You will walk behind me, she says, which is not an insult here. It is instruction for survival. Stilgar binds the encounter with water-seal courtesy. The trade of sips from a catch-pocket tube. The acknowledgement that you are not enemies today. Jameis chafes, speaking harshly about the Amtal, the ancient testing that resolves uncertainty with blood. Stilgar's stare cuts him off. Not here. Not now. The desert chooses the time of knives. Tonight it chooses stealth. He signals, and the troop dissolves into the terrain. You and Jessica move among them as if you had always known how. Footprints angled, silhouettes broken, the group's rhythm made of unison and absence. They take you along a belly of stone where the wind has carved a tunnel of shadow. The air is cooler here, almost kind. You climb in silence, learning small lessons at every turn. How a robe's hem flick can erase a scuff mark. How a hand brushed lightly over a shoulder can pass a warning through a line without a sound. How a thumper is placed where rock thrum confuses its beat and buys a crossing you do not deserve. Above, 2 moons nail down the sky. Below, a worm sign wakes and grows, then fades as the troop arcs wide and waits until its thunder is a lullaby again. At a pause under a broken escarpment, Stilgar studies Jessica with renewed interest. "Your way," he says at last, not as a question. She inclines her head a fraction. He replies with an offer shaped like pragmatism. A place among them if her way becomes their strength, but with obligations written in water. He gestures toward you and his face closes a little, protective of what is his already and suspicious of what you represent. "The boy must learn or die," he states, not cruelly. "It is a desert mercy to call things by their true names." Johnny takes you aside and corrects your suit seals with quick, competent hands. Heat rises in your face despite the night air. She does not notice or pretends not to. "You breathe too fast," she says, and shows you how to slow the draw, hold, and spill. How to drink from the catch tube without taking more than you give back. She points with her chin. "Walk where I walk. If you fall, fall toward rock. If you hear worm, do not run in fear, run in pattern." You repeat the steps. She nods once, indifferent and precise, and something inside you locks to her cadence as if you had been searching for it. They move before dawn toward a hidden fold in the hills. The siege lies somewhere beyond, a name you are not yet allowed to know, a home carved from stone and story. On a high lip, the troop halts while scouts melt into the dark. Stilgar lifts his hand, fingers parting to taste the wind. His palm turns down. Silence deepens. Far off, a glow crawls along the horizon. Patrol craft combing the desert with blind certainty. Jessica's eyes narrow in thought. Your pulse steadies. You have crossed a threshold you cannot recross. When the patrol's hum dies, the troop flows again. You follow Chani through a cleft no off-worlder would notice, into a labyrinth of basalt cooled tonight. The air smells of dust and mineral and a faint sweetness you realize is recycled moisture. Somewhere ahead a murmur grows human and careful. Stilgar looks back once, measuring you both one last time under this sky. He turns away. Decision made. The Fremen have not taken your water. They have offered you a path. You step after them and the desert closes behind like a lid. The Shech is a wound in the stone that has healed over. Invisible until you step through its narrow throat. Inside, the air cools, heavy with the faint musk of bodies and the mineral taste of moisture jealously guarded. The passage twists, widening into chambers carved by centuries of hands. Torches gutter against the walls, their light licking across faces that turn to study you. Men, women, children, all robed in desert cloth, all with eyes of burning blue. They do not cheer, they do not welcome. They measure, Stilgar's troop moves easily through this hive of stone. Weapons are stowed with reverence, water flasks hung carefully in niches. Jessica notes the discipline, the ritual in every gesture. This is not chaos. It is a people bound to survival so tightly that even rest feels like ceremony. She sees it and knows the Fremen are not a ragged tribe, but a nation hidden beneath sand hardened into steel. Paul feels their gaze most keenly. Whispers coil around him. Muad'Dib, Lisan al-Gaib, Mahdi. Words from prophecy. Words seeded long ago by the Bene Gesserit through their Missionaria Protectiva, woven into Fremen myth. Jessica hears them and stiffens, for she knows these seeds were never meant to bear fruit so soon. Yet here in the depths of the desert, among a people who live and die by vision, Paul's very presence brushes against belief. That night he lies awake in a stone alcove, listening to the Sietch breathe. The air circulates through hidden vents drawn from reservoirs deeper still. Somewhere behind sealed walls lies the great treasure of the Fremen. Caches of water hoarded drop by drop over generations. A lake carved from the sacrifice of countless lives. With it, the desert itself might one day be remade. Paul dreams of that future, seeing dunes roll back beneath grasses, rivers cut valleys into rock, clouds gathering over a sea reborn. But the vision twists, stained by crimson waves. Armies cry his name, their banners black against burning skies. He wakes with his hands clenched and the taste of spice bitter on his tongue, 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 bitter on his tongue. Jessica's path within the Sietch unfolds differently. The Fremen women gather around her with questions sharp as knives. They test her with riddles of custom, with the subtle weight of silence. Then at the circle's center, the Reverend Mother Ramallo approaches. Bent and ancient, her skin folded by time. Her eyes burn with the inner fire of one who has drunk the water of life. Jessica knows what is coming before the words are spoken. The tribe needs a new Reverend Mother. The old one is dying, her knowledge and memories needing a vessel to pass into. And now Jessica must take the trial. The water of life is brought forth in a crystal vial, glowing faintly with a poison transformed by a sandworm's drowning. To any untrained body it is death. To untrained in the Bene Gesserit way, it is a crucible. Jessica kneels. The liquid touches her lips, slides down her throat like fire and ice bound together. For a heartbeat her veins seize, her heart falters. Darkness surges at the edges of vision. But her training holds. She bends her body's chemistry, rewrites her blood, turns death into life. Then comes the flood. A storm of memory crashes into her mind, lifetimes upon lifetimes of women who bore the title before her. Voices whisper, cry, sing, rage, a chorus of ancestors pressed into her skull, each demanding to be heard. She gasps, every nerve lit like a star, and then steadies. She is no longer only Jessica. She is every Reverend Mother who came before, stretching back across centuries. When her eyes open, the Sietch erupts in awe. Ramallo bows her head. A new Reverend Mother has risen. Paul feels the echo of it even in his dreams. Something in him stirs in response, as if Jessica's transformation calls to a deeper resonance within him. He sees paths branching wider, faster, spiraling into futures bright and terrible. He sees himself standing before vast legions of Fremen, their voices raised in his name, their knives flashing in holy war. He feels the intoxicating pull of that destiny, the promise of absolute power carried on the desert wind, and he feels the terror of it, the knowledge that this future may be inevitable, that to step aside is to drown in blood, but to step forward is to drown the universe in it. Johnny finds him awake, his eyes distant, his hands trembling. She kneels beside him, offering a sip from her catch tube. The gesture is small, intimate, carved from desert life itself. He drinks, and her eyes hold his, calm, steady with the weight of a people who have endured beyond reason. In her gaze he feels anchor as much as destiny. She will not worship him. She will measure him. And that, perhaps, is what he needs most. The next day, Stilgar calls the Setch together. The strangers, Paul and Jessica, are no longer merely guests. They are bound now by ritual, by the Reverend Mother's transformation, by water owed and given. Yet doubts remain, carried most loudly by Jamis. He steps into the circle of judgment, his crysknife bared, his voice echoing against the stone. He challenges Paul openly, invoking Amtal, the trial by combat that no man can refuse. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Chani's eyes flicker with sudden intensity. Stilgar's jaw tightens, but he cannot intervene. This is the way of the desert. If Paul is to stay, he must fight. If he loses, his water belongs to the tribe. Jessica moves to protest, but Paul raises his hand, calm. His voice is steady. I will not refuse. The Sietch watches with the hunger of those who live on knife-edge truth. In that moment, Paul knows. The visions are not waiting for him in some far-off horizon. They are here, now, sharpening into reality. His survival, his mother's place, the prophecy itself, all balanced on the blade he must soon wield. The desert does not forgive weakness, and neither will the Fremen. The circle forms without shouting, only the scrape of sandals on stone and the whisper of robes drawn tight. Torches press gold coins of light against the cavern walls. Men lay out the lines of combat with simple gestures. Here the fighters stand. Here the witnesses watch. Here the water-takers will wait. Stilgar faces you and Jamis with the weight of custom in his eyes. Amtal, he says, a single word that locks the night to a rule older than memory. To the death. No one flinches. Mercy is a luxury the desert cannot afford. Jamis strips his robe and steps forward, sinew cut hard by hunger and work, his crysknife bare and eager in his hand. He smiles at you with the certainty of a man who has killed before and intends to again. You feel Gurney's lessons rise like scaffolding inside your bones. Balance low, blade close, never give your opponent the rhythm he wants. You reach for your shield reflex and then stop. There are no shields here. The Fremen learned long ago that a shield attracts the worm. What you were taught on Caladan can get you killed underground. Chani slips to your side, the stone drinking the sound of her steps. She presses a sheathed crysknife into your palm, the hilt warm from her skin. The blade must not be bared and returned unblooded, she murmurs, eyes steady on yours. You will give it a name by how you use it. Her fingers close lightly over your wrist, a brief anchoring touch. He will try to break your timing. Let him. Use the space he opens. She steps away without looking back, and the absence of her presence feels like a cliff at your heels. Stilgar raises a hand. The low talk dies. Water to the tribe, he intones, neither for Jamis nor for you, but for the Sietch that will drink either way. He gestures. Begin. Jamis comes like falling stone. Straight in. No feint, no probe, only a blade that hunts the line between your ribs. You slide left, the crysknife grating white fire as it catches his stroke and turns it. He is fast. Faster than any sparring partner who called you boy and tested you with kindness. The second cut hisses up for your throat. You drop, feel the whisper of it kiss hair and heat. Your body wants to retreat into practiced parry and counter. The elegant geometry that wins honor on training floors. Jamis drives through that space laughing, trying to crowd you into the wall where stone will finish what steel starts. The circle breathes with you. Feet find purchase in grit. Sweat finds your eyes and stings like salt knives. You give ground, not from fear but to measure him, to let his confidence overrun its banks. His style is sharp, direct, built out of a place where hesitation is death. Yours is still divided, half in chambered forms, half in a new language you have not learned to speak aloud. He slashes and grins, teeth white in torchlight. He plays at blades, he sneers to the ring. This palmling has never killed. The words strike a seam inside you and something tilts. Duncan's voice crosses the years in a clean line. A fight has no music. It only has decision. Gurney's hand settles on your shoulder in memory. Put away the pretty moves when the knives come out. Your mother's training threads through it, cool and exact. Let the nerves fire, then master them. Choose. The futures you carry crowd your skull like birds against a net. You see one path where Jameis carves you open and the Sietch drinks your water. Another where you hamstring him and spare him and die for the mercy. A third where you move without thinking of moving at all. You choose the third. When Jameis comes again, you do not retreat. You enter. Your knife slides along his in a kiss that is nothing like practice and everything like inevitability. Your left hand takes his wrist, your weight turns his elbow, your blade lifts in a short, efficient hook that opens his forearm. Blood beads. The circle inhales. Jameis's eyes flare. He tries to pull free and finds his own grip betrayed by the wetness slicking his skin. You are already past him, already turned, already there when he wheels back, expecting a parry and meeting only absence as you step to dead angle. Your knife touches his ribs like a question and he snarls the wrong answer. He drives straight at your heart. You drop and the point passes over your shoulder into the space where your head was. Your blade writes a line beneath his sternum, not deep, not yet. He staggers, surprised to be cut by someone he named a child. Rage stiffens his arms. He lunges, overcommitted. You feel the moment break. The world narrows to the thickness of a blade and the distance of a breath. You do not think. You finish. One step inside his arc, your shoulder under his knife, your kreuz knife's edge, an upward crescent that finds the seam below his ribs and lifts. Warmth spills over your hand. Jameis stops speaking forever. He falls to his knees, eyes wide, not in plea but in recognition that the story he built has ended before he finished his sentence. He topples. The stone accepts him the way the desert accepts everything. Without comment, silence holds. The ring does not cheer. The Fremen stare the way people stare at weather that has turned. Stilgar steps in, kneels, touches Jameis' brow with 2 fingers. His water belongs to the Sietch, he says quiet. 2 water takers move forward with ritual tools, faces expressionless, duty as spare as their bodies. They will claim what cannot be left to the air. Nothing is wasted here. Not even grief. Your chest heaves, your hand will not stop shaking. The knife is clean because you wiped it without knowing you had. You look down at Jameis and you do not feel triumph. You feel a weight shift inside your chest, your eyes blur. One hot line breaks free and falls. The nearest Fremen gasps softly. Chani takes a half step toward you and stops. Stilgar sees the tear drop to stone. His gaze changes. He gives water to the dead, someone whispers, awe slicing through the hush. In a land where a single tear is wealth, you have spent a treasure on an enemy, or on a brother in the only currency this world respects. Ritual unfolds with spare efficiency. Jameis' kit is brought out in bundles. A coffee service stained with desert years, a balisay with a cracked bridge, a water skin patched a dozen times, a child's trinket of bone and fiber. Possessions speak a life when words are too expensive. Stilgar calls the names of those owed by Jameis and settles debts with pieces of the kit. What remains is offered to you. You accept because refusal would insult the dead. Because acceptance binds you to the tribe that will drink Jameis tomorrow and remember him the day after. Jessica stands at the edge of the ring, her face calm over a sea that has no shore. What she took into herself as Reverend Mother has not stopped moving. The chorus behind her eyes leans forward to see what you will do, to weigh whether the future they taste in your breath is blessing or plague. Below her calm, something smaller and fiercer stirs. The child she carries has quickened into awareness far too soon, lit by the water of life that flooded her mother's blood. It listens with old attention. It will arrive already remembering. Jessica does not think the name forming in her mind, but it is there, bright as a knife. A daughter, Aaliyah. She watches you sheathe your blade with the care of a craftsman, and the chorus murmurs in languages that never met until now. When the last of the water is sealed, Stilgar calls for names. "A man with us needs two," he says. "A secret name for the Sietch and a name for the world." He looks to Jessica first. "For the Sietch I call him Usul, the base of the pillar." There's a murmur of approval. It is a strong name, a foundation name, a promise of weight born without breaking. Stilgar turns his chin to you. "And for the outer world?" In your mind, a small shape leaps across moonlit sand, ears high, feet finding purchase where larger creatures drown. You saw its tracks on the way here, a perfect script written by survival. It lives by night, drinks the dew it summons with its own breath, moves with rhythms that call no worm. It is the first teacher you did not know you had. "Muad'Dib," you say. "I will be Muad'Dib." The word settles in the Sietch like a pebble dropped into a deep well. The ripples go down farther than light. Stilgar nods, satisfied. "Usul of our Sietch, Muad'Dib before the world." He steps close, his hand firm on your shoulder, the gesture neither paternal nor possessive, but contractual. "You are of us now," he says. "Your water is our water." His eyes flick to Jessica. "And hers. Sayadina, Reverend Mother-to-be, we will teach you the rest of our ways. And you will teach us what your way can give." Chani comes to you last, not with ceremony, but with the practical tasks that bind people together. She shows you where Jameis's family will look to you now, how obligation flows along bloodlines and knife lines here. She shows you how to wrap the robe tighter for a night that will bite. Her hand lingers a fraction longer than it must when she fastens your kit. You do not speak the words that press at your mouth. You have earned a place in this world by taking a life. You will have to earn the right to keep it by how you spend your own. Later, alone in a hollowed cell, you set Jameis Balasset across your knees. One string holds tune. You pluck it once. The note is thin and honest. You hear Gurney's laugh, Duncan's roar, your father's voice folded into the sea wind of Caladan. You let the string fade. The desert will not return what it takes. It will borrow what you become. Sleep comes in hard slices. In one you stand on a ridge as storms move like armies and armies move like storms. The Fremen a tide under your hands. The sky torn by fire while your name rips from 1,000 throats. In another you walk alone beneath a moon shaped like a knife, following the small, neat tracks of a desert mouse toward a horizon that does not move. Between the slices, quiet. Breath. Water counted in heartbeats. By morning, the Sietch has woven you into its pattern. Not loved, not distrusted. Held like a tool that may yet prove true. You wake as Usul, you dress as Muad'Dib, and the stone remembers the sound of your feet. Somewhere far above, dunes shift under a wind that is already bringing you the next test. The desert reshapes you. Days blend into cycles of heat and shadow, movement and stillness. Under Stilgar's guidance, you learn the sand's grammar, how to plant your feet without summoning the worm, how to sip from your catch tube without wasting a drop, how to listen to the wind for the hiss of storms. The Fremen do not coddle. They watch you with silence, waiting for the moment you falter. Yet with each task mastered, with each ritual understood, you sink deeper into their pattern. You are no longer only the son of Duke Leto. You are Usul within the Sietch, Muad'Dib beyond it. Jessica's transformation has sealed her place among them. As Reverend Mother, she carries within her the chorus of lives that preceded her, voices whispering in her blood. The women of the Sietch look to her with reverence. They see prophecy confirmed, the signs of the Lisan al-Gaib fulfilled before their eyes. She accepts the role with Bene Gesserit calm, but at night, when the Sietch sleeps, she gazes at you with an unease she cannot voice. For she sees where this path may lead, and the fire in your eyes makes her fear that she has birthed not only a sun, but a storm. Your own visions sharpen with each breath of spice. In dreams and waking moments alike, you see deserts lit by fire, Fremen legions riding in waves across the stars, their voices crying your name in worship and in war. You see cities burning, rivers of blood, the green dream of Arrakis bought with oceans of corpses. And you see yourself enthroned, powerful, bound to a destiny you both crave and dread. The question gnaws at you. Are you choosing these paths, or are they choosing you? Among the Fremen, respect grows. Stilgar calls you to counsel, his voice steady as stone. He sees in you not only the echoes of prophecy, but the discipline of a leader. He watches how you train with their warriors, how you adapt faster than any outworlder should. He begins to defer in small ways, letting you speak, letting your judgment shape decisions. This is not generosity, it is recognition. Stilgar is no fool, he knows a tide when he sees it rising. And then there is Chani. She moves with you as shadow and guide, her eyes calm but questioning, never worshipful. She teaches you the desert's intimacy, how to track worm sign, how to ride the dunes, how to hear the silence between sounds. Nights by the fires of the Sietch, when stories ripple through the air, she sits close enough for you to feel the brush of her sleeve, her gaze steady as if weighing not the legend you might become, but the boy you still are. In her presence you find a tether against the whirl of visions, a reminder that prophecy is not the same as love, that the desert can give as well as take. The turning point comes with the ritual of spice. Deep in the desert, under the black dome of a star-hungry sky, the tribe gathers. Fires flicker against the dunes, a goblet is brought forth filled with spice essence, a thick, glowing liquid distilled from the secret of the worms. To drink it is to court death, to open the mind to visions that either consume or transform. You lift it with both hands, the heat of the substance burning through the cup. Stilgar watches. Jessica watches. The entire Sietch holds its breath. You drink. The taste is fire wrapped in sweetness, smoke layered with light. It sears your throat, claws through your veins. The desert folds inward and you fall through it. Visions explode sharper than ever before. You stand on a battlefield beneath black skies, Fremen warriors surging like a storm tide. Ships burn in orbit, raining fire onto the dunes. You hear your name, Muad'Dib, chanted in a rhythm that shakes the stars. You see blood washing over planets carried in rivers across the Imperium. You see the Emperor's throne crumbling beneath your feet. And then you see a knife, not in another's hand, but in your own, striking, sealing, commanding. You gasp, torn between terror and ecstasy. And deeper still, beyond prophecy, something vast awakens. A corridor without end, a vision that spans time itself, threads of past and future stretching before you. You see every choice branching into 1,000 others, every step echoing across generations. The weight crushes you, the light blinds you, and then suddenly clarity. You are the fulcrum, the Kwisatz Haderach, the one who can walk paths no other can. You return gasping, drenched in sweat, your body trembling. Jessica kneels at your side, her hand gripping your shoulder, her eyes wide with both fear and awe. The tribe murmurs, voices rising in a swell that feels like worship. Stilgar bows his head not to the prophecy but to the reality of it. The boy has become something more. From that night forward, everything changes. No longer merely accepted, you are obeyed. The Fremen call you Muad'Dib with reverence, with the certainty of prophecy fulfilled. You begin to teach them the tactics your father taught you, blending Atreides' discipline with desert ferocity. You shape them into a blade honed not only for survival but for war. You speak of seizing spice harvesters, of riding the great worms, of turning the desert itself into a weapon. They listen, they believe, and they prepare. You feel the desert inside you now, not just in your lungs or veins, but in your soul. The sand, the spice, the worm song, all part of you, all answering to your name. Yet with every step forward, the visions darken. You see not only the liberation of Arrakis, but the jihad carried outward, a storm of fire that will engulf worlds beyond count. It is your victory, it is your curse. You stand on the ridge at dawn, the desert stretching before you, the wind carrying the scent of spice and blood. Chani steps beside you, her hand brushing yours. She says nothing. She does not need to. The desert has given you its name. You are Muad'Dib, and the universe will soon tremble beneath it. The desert becomes your fortress, its silence your ally, its fury your blade. Under your guidance, the Fremen begin to move as one body with many knives. What were once scattered tribes hard-pressed to survive become disciplined companies, each step of their training stitched together from Atreides' strategy and desert instinct. You teach them what your father taught you. Precision, patience, the strength that comes not from cruelty but from unity, and they teach you their deadliest secret, how to summon and ride the great sandworms, turning the planet's most feared predator into a steed of war. The first time you see it, the ground heaves like a living sea, sand collapsing in an avalanche of thunder. A worm bursts from beneath the dunes, its ridged body rising like a mountain breaking free of the earth, its mouth opening into concentric rings of razors. Fremen move with practiced ritual, plunging their maker hooks into the worm's flank, prying open its scales to expose the softer flesh beneath. With reverence and courage, they mount the beast, climbing its rolling body as it hurtles forward. When the worm turns, its great bulk bends to the will of the rider, a living engine of the desert. To outsiders, it is madness. To the Fremen, it is worship. To you, it is destiny. You ride, the wind tearing at your robe, the worm's body vibrating with terrible power beneath your feet. The desert roars in your ears, a symphony of sand and speed. For a moment, all your visions coalesce into a single truth. This is the weapon that will break the Harkonnens, that will humble the Emperor himself. The desert has given you its fury, and you will wield it. Raids begin with small strikes. A spice harvester overrun at dawn, its crew scattered, its cargo seized. Ornithopters vanish into sandstorms, captured or destroyed. Patrols vanish without a trace, swallowed by the desert night. Each victory ripples outward, carried by whispers, Muad'Dib. The name becomes a knife of its own, carving fear into Harkonnen ranks, stirring hope in the oppressed. Rabban, brutal and clumsy, tries to crush the rebellion with terror. He raises taxes, burns villages, slaughters indiscriminately. But every act of cruelty only deepens Fremen resolve. The desert swallows his punishments, his soldiers, his harvesters. Spice shipments dwindle, profits dry up. The Baron from the filth of Gedi Prime seethes at the losses, and the Emperor in his gilded palace begins to feel unease. You strike again and again, never where expected, never where the enemy is strongest. Each attack is followed by disappearance into the dunes, into sietches invisible to satellites or spies. The Fremen melt into stone, into shadow, into myth. To the Imperium, it seems the desert itself has risen against them, And always, at the heart of every blow, every victory, is the figure the Fremen call their Mahdi, their Muad'Dib. Johnny rides at your side, her crysknife gleaming, her laughter sharp against the wind. In battle she is fierce, without hesitation, yet when the fighting ends, she looks at you with steady calm. She does not see prophecy in your eyes. She sees the man beneath it, the one who has carried loss and burden into the desert and returned with fire. Beside her you find not worship, but balance. Jessica watches from the sietch, her eyes haunted. She hears the chants, the prayers that rise in your name. She sees the way the children look at you, the way warriors bow before you. She knows the pattern of religious fervor, knows how quickly it can turn from devotion to destruction. She fears what she has unleashed, not only for the Imperium but for you. Yet the path cannot be turned back. Spice harvesters burn. Sardaukar detachments sent in secret are found broken in the sand. The desert war grows from rumor to nightmare, from skirmish to campaign. Whole legions of Fremen surge across the dunes mounted on worms, striking with precision and vanishing before counterattack can form. At night, as you stand on the crest of a dune, the horizon flickering with fires from another raid, you feel the weight of inevitability pressing on your chest. The Emperor cannot ignore this forever. His throne itself rests on the spice, and you are choking its flow. He will come. He must. And when he does, the desert will be ready. Still, even in triumph, your visions haunt you. You see not only the victories, but the cost, the jihad stretching outward like fire on dry grass, burning across worlds, carried on the cries of your name. You cannot stop seeing it. You cannot stop fearing it. Yet you cannot step aside either. The desert has chosen, the Fremen have chosen. Prophecy has wrapped itself around your every breath. Muad'Dib, the boy you were, is gone. In his place stands a figure the universe will soon reckon with. A leader, a prophet, a weapon sharpened by sand and time. And beyond the horizon the Emperor stirs. Rumor hardens into orbiting metal. The Emperor's armada spills across the morning sky like a string of cold suns, hulls glinting over the white edge of the shield wall. Carriels, troop transports, command barges, and the knife-black barges of the Sardaukar descend toward Arrakis in measured waves. The desert listens without flinching. On a ridge far from the city you stand with Stilgar and the Nibes, the wind tugging your cloak, the worm hooks at your belt knocking softly together. You taste spice at the back of your throat and count the drops of time left before the storm arrives. The plan has been set into the dunes. Now you let it move. Below, the Emperor makes his court upon Arrakis. Banners of the Golden Lion ripple over a field of gunmetal and plasteel. Sardaukar set perimeter lines with machine calm, their helmets dull under the sun. The Emperor's pavilion unfolds like a flower of lacquered plates. Baron Harkonnen hovers nearby on his suspensors, perspiration shining in furnace heat, his smile all appetite. Feyd-Rautha stands at his shoulder, coiled and elegant, eyes bright with hunger. Count Fenring drifts along the edges, quiet and unreadable. The Reverend Mother Mohiam arrives veiled, her presence a gravity the officers do not name. Princess Irulan watches and writes, historian of a moment she thinks she understands. Reports, Shaddam Four says, seated where the light frames him as if he were carved from it. Officers speak in dry numbers, shipments cut by half, then half again. Harvester losses unacceptable, patrols erased, whole companies gone to sand. The name repeats itself until it is almost a shape in the air. Muad'Dib. The Emperor's mouth does not tighten, but the lines at his eyes deepen. A Fremen bandit, he says, a local contagion. The Reverend Mother leans close and whispers about religions seeded long ago, about stories that ripen when the desert is harsh enough. He waves a hand once as if parting smoke. We will apply flame, he says. The Baron simpers and promises outcomes. Fide speaks the word restoration as if it were a knife he means to use. Mohiam asks about the spice. The Emperor glances to a waiting guild representative, faceless behind a shimmering enclosure, the suggestion of an altered silhouette moving within. The flow resumes when the desert is disciplined, Shaddam says. The enclosure hums, a pressure without sound. It communicates displeasure without words. The Emperor rises, a small concession to reality. We act now. Orders crackle outward. Sardaukar detachments peel from formation and sink into the dunes like wedges of shadow. On the ridge, you watch their lines move. You kneel and press your palm into the sand. The pulse beneath it answers. Stilgar crouches beside you. They build their house against the wall, he says, eyes on the Emperor's camp. Good stone, good targets. You nod once. The storm front stands out over the western horizon in a bruised, dark line. Lightning branches inside it. The air tastes metallic. Call the largest makers, you say. Shape the host. We strike when the wind turns. Stilgar signs to messengers who vanish into the slope as if swallowed by it. In the Emperor's lines, a Sardaukar patrol returns with a prize. They drag a child through the dust, small and fierce-eyed, her robe torn, her still suit scored by stone. She moves without fear, only irritation that men with knives slowed her. Found near a Setch entrance, the captain reports. Outland speech, knows our countersigns before we speak them. They thrust her into the pavilion. The Reverend Mother goes still. You can feel her recognition from miles away, a shiver on the air. The child raises her chin and looks at the Emperor as if measuring a specimen. Aliyah, your sister, born into consciousness by the flood that made Jessica Reverend Mother. Her voice is clear, antiquely calm. Shaddam, she says, using his name like an equal. You came where the desert promised you would. The Sardaukar bristle. The Baron laughs too quickly. A quaint witch, he says. A pet for the Emperor. Moyam's eyes narrow to knives. Abomination, she breathes, so soft it is almost thought. Aliyah turns her head toward the sound without moving her eyes and smiles a child's patient smile. You trained my mother to fear that word, she says. It has no power here. Shaddam studies her as one might study an instrument. Tell me of your Muad'Dib, he says. Where is he hidden? Aliyah tilts her head. Where the wind will break your shields, she answers. Where your soldiers will learn our names one final time. The Baron's mirth thins. Precocious, he mutters, and drifts closer to see her better. Greed curious about power it has not tasted. Moyam steps between them with a rustle of veils. She is not to be touched. The Emperor's gaze flickers to the horizon. The storm has grown while they argued. He signals to have the child secured. Chains are not used. A circle of Sardaukar surrounds her and pretends that is enough. In the Sietch caverns, Jessica hears the report carried by whisper and drum. She closes her eyes and the chorus within her stirs, 1,000 women seeking words that do not exist. Aliyah, she says, and in the saying there is iron. She turns to the women of the Sietch and they ready what is theirs to ready. The desert will receive what comes, the desert will answer. You descend to the muster hollow where the Fremen gather in ranks cut from night. Thousands, tens of thousands, faces veiled, eyes blue within blue catching starfire, worm hooks gleam, thumpers thud at measured intervals, a heartbeat the dunes will not ignore. Your name moves through the host without being shouted, Muad'Dib. It is a pressure along the skin, it is resolve. Chani steps from the line and tightens the last seal at your collar, her fingers sure. For a moment the storm sound fades and you hear only her breath. Do not chase fate, she says. Make it walk where you decide. You nod and feel the terrible calm take hold. Signals pass. Scouts slide back from the wall and draw lines in sand. The Emperor's camp is broad, set against rock, shield projectors humming in a lattice that scatters wind into glitter. Heavy guns face outward. Sardaukar stand in blocks, perfect and inflexible. They cannot see under the sand. They cannot feel what you feel now vibrating through your bones. The thumpers reach crescendo. Silence follows. Then the desert lifts. Wormsign rolls toward the wall from 3 horizons at once. Ridge after ridge buckles and shatters as pillars of sand rise. The ground becomes a tide. Makers break the surface in stacked rings of shadow and light. Titans waking, skin ridges flaring under hooks that bite and hold. Fremen pour onto their backs in ordered streams, feet finding rhythm, arms bracketed into ropes and grips they learned as children. The storm wind hits a breath later, tearing banners, flattening tents, turning the Emperor's pavilion into a struggling thing of silk and pins. Guards shout over the roar. The Sardaukar wheel to face the oncoming ocean of living dunes and men who ride them. You raise your arm. On cue, a single dull sun flowers against the shield wall. Then another higher to the south. The family atomics you swore never to use are not spent in anger but in calculus. Plasteel and stone jump white and vanish, opening a wound in the wall miles long. The storm finds it instantly. A river of air howls through the gap and leaps outward, carrying sand and fire into the Emperor's lines. Shields flare and collapse. Guns stagger and die. For the first time, Sardaukar units lose formation before they touch an enemy. From the ridge, you step onto your maker, the old scar beneath your feet humming like a living drum. The desert erupts around you as the host moves, a crescent of worms bearing warriors toward the heart of imperial power. Your voice is clear in the gale. Forward, you say, and the word climbs on 10,000 throats. In the pavilion, Irulan's pen stops. Mohiam's mouth becomes a thin line. The Baron suspensors whine as he dodges a snapped mooring that whips past like a killing snake. Shaddam IV stands and for the first time looks small in the frame of his own war. He lifts his hand to signal a retreat that is not possible. Sand invades the spaces between all plans. The storm takes the field. The Fremen take the storm. The Emperor is here, so are you. The desert is ready to decide. The storm devours sky and sand alike. Lightning carves brief bones of brightness through walls of dust, illuminating chaos beneath. Sardaukar squadrons staggering blind, their perfect formations shattered. Harkonnen mercenaries breaking under the fury of wind and worm song. The air tastes of spice, iron, and ozone. The Emperor's banners whip like shredded leaves. From the back of your worm you rise, robes snapping in the gale, crysknife drawn. The beast heaves forward and the Fremen surge with it, ranks flowing across the dunes in seamless rhythm. Each rider strikes like a drop of storm water falling into a flood. Explosives bloom at choke points. Harvester shells repurposed into bombs tear Sardaukar lines. Ornithopters dive from above, captured machines piloted by desert hands, loosing fire on camps below before vanishing back into the sandstorm. The Sardaukar fight with cold precision even in collapse. Their blades carve arcs of fire through the dust, their discipline unyielding. But for every squad that holds, a worm erupts beneath them, swallowing men, metal, and memory into its abyssal mouth. You see one Sardaukar captain plant his standard into the sand and rally his men in defiance. A worm's shadow swallows him whole and the standard vanishes as if it never was. At the center of the maelstrom, the Emperor's pavilion clings to the shattered ground, anchored by desperation. Shaddam IV commands retreat and redeployment, his words shredded by the storm. But the Sardaukar cannot reform. His commander's face is pale beneath their helms. The Baron hovers close, his suspensors whining, eyes darting for a path of escape. Feyd-Rautha stands tall, youthful arrogance painted across his features. The storm reflected in his eyes as if he believes himself its master. Then the sand splits open. Your worm breaches titanic, its maw a cathedral of teeth, and you leap from its back into the fray. The Fremen roar your name, Muad'Dib. The cry is not worship now, it is war made flesh. You cut into the heart of the Sardaukar with terrible clarity, your blade striking where visions told you it must. Every movement feels inevitable. Every death is one you have seen before. You are not merely fighting. You are enacting what was already written. In the distance, Stilgar leads another host, their worms colliding with the Emperor's rear guard. Explosions bloom like suns along the line. Chani fights at your side, her movements precise, her knife finding gaps in Sardaukar armor with the ease of breath. Dust streaks her face, her eyes fierce and calm. For a moment amid the slaughter, you feel not prophecy but partnership. The battle crescendos in fire and sand. Sardaukar companies fall one by one, ground down by a tide they cannot comprehend. The Emperor's command collapses inward, surrounded, pinned. His pavilion shakes under the weight of the storm, its gilded plates crumpling like paper. You drive your forces closer, step by inexorable step, until the last shields flicker and fail. Silence begins where the pavilion ends. The storm still howls. The battle still rages on its edges, but here at the Emperor's feet a pocket of stillness forms. You stand in it, Muad'Dib cloaked in dust. Fremen warriors massed behind you like a living wall. Stilgar takes his place at your right. Chani breathes at your shoulder. Jessica emerges, hood drawn low, Reverend Mother's eyes glowing with ancestral fire. Before you, Shaddam IV sits stiff upon his trembling throne. His courtiers cluster pale around him. Irulan, his daughter, watches with ink-stained fingers frozen mid-word. The Reverend Mother Mohiam veils her face, but you feel her scrutiny like a blade at your throat. The Baron hovers fat and uneasy. Feyd-Rautha burning with hungry defiance beside him. You step forward. The sand shifts under your boots. The Emperor's guards raise their blades, but his hand halts them. He stares at you, his face a mask cracked by disbelief. "You are the boy," he says. The words taste of denial. "The son of a minor duke. I am Muad'Dib," you answer, your voice steady, carrying through storm and silence alike. The one your own prophecies named, the one your greed awoke. You gesture outward to the ruins of his army, to the worms that circle like gods at the edges of sight. "This is my desert, this is my throne," the Baron snorts, his laughter greasy even in defeat. "A thief playing prophet, a child leading sandrats. You cannot rule an empire with superstition." His suspensors whine as he drifts closer, his massive body trembling with the effort of holding itself aloft. Feyd steps forward too, blade gleaming, his smile a predator's promise. "Then let him prove it," he says. "By knife, not by dream." The challenge hangs in the storm-churned air, sharp and undeniable. The Emperor's eyes flicker between you and Feyd, calculation etched deep. He says nothing, but his silence grants permission. The Reverend Mother's breath is audible under her veil. Jessica's hand curls at her side. Chani looks at you, not pleading, not warning, only present. You nod once. So be it. The storm subsides into a hush, as if the desert itself has paused to witness. Sardaukar survivors lower their blades. Fremen melt into stillness. Courtiers hold their breath. Two figures step into the ring of ruin. Feyd-Rautha, heir of Harkonnen cruelty, and you, Muad'Dib, son of the desert, heir of prophecy. One of you will not leave it alive. The ring is nothing more than trampled sand and wreckage, but it might as well be an arena carved for gods. The storm crouches at the horizon, grumbling, while torches and shiplights throw jagged shadows across the circle. Every eye, Fremen, Sardaukar, noble and slave, fixes on you and Feyd-Rautha. For all the armies crushed, all the fleets grounded, the future now balances on two knives. Fade steps in with a predator's grace, lithe where the Baron was grotesque, handsome where the Harkonnen name was ugly. His smile gleams with contempt, his body tuned to killing. He flourishes the blade, savoring the theater. "Cousin," he sneers, "let us see what desert tricks a bastard duke's son has learned." His voice carries arrogance, but his eyes never stop measuring. He knows you are dangerous. He knows prophecy has teeth. You feel the crysknife's weight in your hand, its edge alive. Around you, silence hardens. Chani's gaze burns steady. Jessica stands veiled, a chorus of ancestral memories murmuring within her. Stilgar watches as if the desert itself has taken human shape. Even the Emperor leans forward, tension crackling in the set of his shoulders. This is no duel of honor. It is succession played in blood. Fade strikes first, fast as a striking hawk, his knife whistling for your heart. Training carries you through the motion. Parry, pivot, slide inside his guard. Sand grits underfoot, blades flash in the stormlight. He is quicker than Jameis, more cunning, each feint layered with a trap. Once his blade grazes your ribs, leaving a shallow burn that sharpens your senses. He grins, tasting victory. You do not give him rhythm. You remember Duncan's warning, never fight the fight your enemy wants. You let his patterns overextend, slipping into his shadow, your movements spare, efficient. Every strike you make is meant, no flourish wasted. The Fremen murmur approval in their silence. Stilgar nods once. Fade feints a stumble, his face twisting with false pain. For an instant the crowd leans, then he springs, his blade hidden in his palm, tipped with poison. You feel the vision before it happens. A path where his blade pierces your neck, where cheers turn to gasps, where your destiny ends here. In that same heartbeat you pivot, seizing his wrist, driving your knife in a short arc beneath his guard. The poisoned blade scrapes air. Your creased knife finds flesh. Fade gasps, shock breaking his mask of arrogance. His eyes meet yours wide, burning with disbelief and rage. You twist, finish the strike, and he collapses into the sand, blood dark against gold. His body shudders once, then lies still. The Harkonnen air is gone. Silence breaks like a wave. Fremen voices rise in a thunderous chant. Muad'Dib, Muad'Dib. The sound shakes the sky, reverberating through stone and storm alike. Sardaukar lower their blades, defeated. The Baron reels backward, his suspensors shrieking. For once his laughter fails him. The Emperor himself pales, the weight of inevitability pressing down like the storm clouds above. You stand over Fade's body, breath steady, blade dripping. The desert's verdict has been delivered. You are not merely the son of Duke Leto, not merely the Mahdi of prophecy. You are the Kwisatz Haderach, one who can see the weave of all paths and step where no other dares. Jessica lowers her veil, her gaze fierce and sorrowful. She sees the jihad burning in your eyes, the future she feared, vast and unstoppable. Chani comes to your side, her hand steady on your arm, grounding you in the present. Stilgar kneels first, then others follow until the entire host bends before you, not as a duke, not as a boy, but as emperor in truth, if not yet in name. The Baron whimpers, retreating on whining suspensors. You look at him, and in your voice the desert itself speaks. Your house is finished. He stumbles, bloated hands trembling, eyes darting for escape, but there is none. The Fremen close in, knives gleaming. The storm outside roars, as if eager for the blood it knows will follow. Shaddam 4 meets your gaze. The ruler of the known universe, cloaked in power and tradition, looks upon you with something dangerously close to fear. For he knows armies have failed him, legions have fallen, and in the circle of sand his empire has already changed hands. The duel is done. The future is decided, only the final stroke remains, to seize the throne itself. Silence hangs over the wrecked pavilion like a drawn breath. Sand rattles against bent plates. Lamps sway on torn cables. You stand with the knife still wet in your fist, Feyd-Rautha cooling at your feet. Across the shattered floor, the Emperor grips his armrest as if the throne might take wing. Sardaukar hold their lines by habit, not hope. Fremen fill the gaps like wind-blown grain, faces veiled, eyes unblinking. Somewhere beyond, worms circle. They're passing a low thunder in the bones. A child's figure steps through the ring of blades, and men in armor recoil before her. Alia walks as if the storm were courteous. Dust powders her hair. Her small hand is empty, yet power gathers around her like heat above rock. She stops beneath the fat shadow of the Baron. His suspensors whine. His mouth opens to mock. The movement never becomes a word. Alia lifts her hand and the needle is there and gone, a flicker at the throat. The great body shudders, turns in on itself, and drops with a groan of straining harness. Silence presses closer. The Harkonnen line ends at a child's eye level. You let the moment stand. Then you raise your gaze to the Emperor, and beyond him to the shimmering enclosure where the guild's envoy lurks like a thought that will not speak. Your ships cross the void because Arrakis breathes, you say, voice even. Cut the breath and the Imperium staggers. You point toward the shield wall's torn scar where lightning still crawls along raw rock. We opened stone this morning. We can open spice tomorrow. We know where the pre-spice masses rise. Atomics in the caverns and the desert smothers your navigators for a century. The enclosure hums. A pressure felt more than heard. Within its blur, a shape leans listening. The Emperor shifts as if the floor tilted. The Reverend Mother's veil barely stirs. Behind it, you feel the sharpness of her calculation and the ache of her fear. Count Fenring's eyes meet yours once, quick and appraising, and fall away. He reads what must be done and what he will refuse to do. Terms, Shadamfur says at last, voice dry in the storm's lull. Recognition of my claim, you answer. An end to Sardaukar presence on Arrakis. Great houses summoned to witness, a binding compact with the Fremen as the planet's rightful people. And one more thing. You let the words travel the length of the broken court. Your daughter will be my wife. Irulan straightens, ink still wet on her fingers. Surprise flickers across her face, then discipline schools it smooth. She has been trained for this moment since she was old enough to hold a stylus. She understands the arithmetic of thrones. She studies you without flinching, the historian measuring the man who will edit history by living. The Emperor inhales, finds pride, and sets it down like a useless tool. You would take my place, he says, and the sentence is both question and concession. I will take the burden, you reply. With your abdication announced before the houses, with your life and name preserved. Refuse and I close the desert's fist. Around you the future tightens into a line you have seen many times. One branch glows like a blade, a quick command, atomics plunged into spawning grounds, the guild on its knees, worlds going dark, a broken Imperium kneeling amid ashes. Another burns lower but longer. Capitulation? A marriage set upon a field of ruin, banners lowered, your hand rising not as executioner but as seal. The third, brightest and darkest both, is the jihad. Your name carried outward on tides of blood you cannot fully turn. You stand in the narrow place between. Mohiam steps forward. He is a religious eruption, she says, and the words taste of centuries of planning undone. He will drown the Empire in belief. Jessica's gaze cuts through the veil. He will drown it either way, her eyes say. Choose the depth you can survive. Fenring moves, a shadow beside the throne. In other paths, he comes close with a friend's smile and a blade hidden in humility. In those, you feel the point, taste the copper, watch the desert recede. Here, he lowers his head. Majesty, he murmurs. This tide will not be turned by a single thrust. He steps back. A man shaped like a stiletto declines to be used. The Emperor looks to the guild. The enclosure's hum swells, then steadies. You receive assent without words. Spice must flow. Spice will flow under a new name. Shaddam IV lifts a hand, and the last formalities of his reign begin. Messengers sprint through dust. Recorders steady their hands. Irulan steps forward to stand beside you. The court reshapes itself in a series of small acceptances. A banner lowered here, a sword grounded there, a breath released. Stilgar watches the ritual with a soldier's patience and a desert man's suspicion. This language of silk is thin, but it binds when knives have already done their work. You turn so your voice carries to the Fremen first. The Sietch dream lives, you say. The water kinds counted, the wind traps and basins, the seeds hoarded in shadow. We bring them out into day. We will keep the worm and keep the spice. We will make gardens without forgetting sand. Heads bow, hands touch hearts. In faces veiled against grit, an older light burns. The stubborn, practical hope of people who have survived by counting drops and will one day count streams. Chani stands a step behind your shoulder, where she has walked through wind and fire. Her eyes meet Irulan's for a quiet moment. No words pass. Irulan is crown and treaty and history's pen. Chani is the gravity of your life. You feel the pull of both and the cost of choosing. You do not lie to either. You are my wife-in-law, you say to Irulan when the words must be said, and you will have my respect. Then lower to the desert that hears the truth in breath, you murmur to the woman who has kept your center. Chani's chin lifts once, not in surrender but in understanding as old as vows and older than thrones. Ceremony grinds through dust. Declarations are recorded. Sardaukar stack their arms in bitter, orderly piles. The Baron's carcass is dragged away, its stench leaving the air cleaner than before. Aliyah wipes her needle on a scrap of Harkonnen silk and tucks it into a sleeve with the solemnity of a priest putting away a relic. Jessica watches you from the edge of the pavilion, the vast choir behind her eyes murmuring, a grandmother's pride braided with a general's dread. When the last words of abdication leave the Emperor's mouth, a wind change rolls across the field. You feel it on your skin, a cool thread in the heat. Irulan's hand turns so your fingers touch for the length of a breath, an acknowledgement of the machine you have set in motion together. You step forward, knees bend before you, courtiers first, then soldiers, then the stubborn, necessary remainder. The storm mutters and eases. Somewhere beyond the wall, thunder resolves into the steady hiss of sand settling, and still the other vision does not recede. Even with the throne offered and taken, even with the guild's silent nod, you see banners with your sign burning across alien skies. Hear prayers shouted as orders, feel the weight of victories that taste like ash. You can shave the worst edges. You can forbid excesses that tempt men when they believe the universe has blessed their rage. You can direct, deflect, reduce. But you cannot stop the tide without drowning the desert you have sworn to free. Choice remains, consequence remains, power is only a more complex debt. Night lowers. The worms turn their arcs toward the deeper sands. Fremen begin their quiet work among the wreckage, separating what can be used from what will be returned to the dunes. You stand a moment longer where the throne trembles on broken flooring and look past banners and faces to a horizon you have seen from within and without. The air smells of ozone and spice, of metal cooling and blood drying, of promises newly spoken. You breathe, count the water in that breath and let it go. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Novel Whisper Official, and comment below the title of the novel you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. The Empire waits. The desert answers. Your name moves outward like wind, and you feel the world tilt to match it. You step down from the wrecked pavilion onto sand that accepts all weight the same, and the future steps with you. 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 Future steps with you.